All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the session. This is going to be a rough introduction and demonstration of a tool that the Siege Lab has been developing. The Siege Lab stands for the Community Engagement, Environmental Justice, and Health Lab. It's the lab at the University of Maryland that Dr. Jacoby Wilson is the head of and leads. My name is Joseph Galarraga. I am a I have my master's of public health from the University of Maryland. I am a faculty assistant in the Siege Lab, assisting with various research duties, putting together a symposium, all sorts of activities related to the lab. So I am excited to get started and begin demonstrating this tool, explaining this tool. Yes. I just want to make a note before we really begin that we're asking that all participants keep their mics muted and their cameras off until maybe we get to the Q&A session or portion of the session. And also, my neighbor here is mowing the lawn. So unfortunately, these are sorts of things that we can't time out in our virtual environment. So if you hear some background noise, I apologize for that in advance. But so we're going to begin. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I'll be able to share the, oh, here we go, share computer sound, because there is a video that we are going to play. All right. So let's begin. So welcome to the My Block Counts Community Block Assessment demonstration, explanation, etc. As I said, my name is Joseph Galarraga. I'm happy to share this info with you today. So what are we going to do today? We're going to learn about environmental justice. I'm sure that we all are familiar with the concept of environmental justice, but we are going to use a definition developed by Dr. Bunyan Bryant just to get us all on the same page about this. We're going to explore policies that shape our communities and shape community health, well-being. We're going to discuss citizen science and your role in bringing data to the people. We're going to practice using a tool to conduct block reviews, and I'm going to show you how we can conduct a community block assessment using the My Block Counts tool. So to begin, I'm going to just show this video that is really kind of the basis for this tool. The reason why we thought it's useful to develop a community block assessment tool that takes stock of the features of the built environment, the natural environment, physical environment, social environment, things like that. Because what we have learned through research involved with the social determinants of health, from planning and zoning, from all sorts of disciplines, is that where you live, your environment, you know, it really is a defining factor in health outcomes, in well-being, things like that. It's the, you know, the backbone of environmental justice, really, in a lot of ways. So I'm going to start by sharing this video. This is a video that was developed for California as a case, but it's extremely applicable to what we're going to be talking about now. So hopefully everything technology-wise works with the audio, but we're going to start now. Oh, we're going to go back. Sorry, folks. Let's try to get this playing. There we go.
What determines how long we'll live? Is it what we do? Is it who we are? Actually, when it comes to predicting how long you'll live, your zip code is more important than your genetic code. Here's how this works. Meet Deb and Maria. They both have jobs, they're around the same age, they're both married, and they both have 2 kids. Deb lives in A-Town, while Maria lives in B-ville, less than 1 mile away. They're similar in so many ways, but here's the thing. On average, residents of B-ville will die more than 15 years sooner than the residents of A-Town. Why? Because where you live is about more than just your address. It's about your opportunities. For example, Deb and Maria's access to healthy options is really different. In A-Town, Deb's family is surrounded by healthy food options, including farmers markets, specialty shops, and grocery stores. The air in A-Town is cleaner and fresher, and there are lots of safe, clean parks where Deb can exercise and her children can play. A-Town has good public schools for Deb's kids and easy access to emergency and preventive health care. On the other hand, B-ville has broken, badly lit sidewalks, and the parks are unsafe. The air is filled with truck exhausts from the nearby highway. And for food options, Maria's only choices are B-ville's many liquor stores, fast food places, or convenience stores. The schools in B-ville are overcrowded and undersupported. And even if Maria can get her kids into better schools far away, she needs to figure out how to get them there without access to a car. So for Maria, having to juggle so much to find healthy options can be an overwhelming source of chronic stress, which is a serious health risk factor. In fact, for all the residents of B-ville, chronic stress drives health problems like obesity, diabetes, asthma, and heart disease. How did A-Town and B-ville get so different? Well, in many cases in cities and towns across California, the root cause was racial and economic discrimination. Over the generations, poor white people and people of color were pushed to less desirable parts of town. Where banks refused to lend money, businesses left, jobs too, schools declined, and the neighborhood crumbled. Everyone who could move away did. And what's more, when communities like A-Town and B-ville are so unequal, B-ville isn't the only one that suffers. Because it turns out that not only is your zip code a predictor of how long you'll live, so is what country you live in. Countries with the greatest income inequality have the lowest life expectancy. So even Americans like Deb, who are white, insured, college-educated, and upper income, die younger than their peers in other countries. In fact, our life expectancy is 43rd in the world, and that number is slipping. In the end, our biggest health risk may actually be inequality, and extreme inequality hurts us all. So what do we do? Well, if we're all going to be healthier, we don't just need to help the folks in B-ville beat the odds. We need to change the odds for everyone. And that's what we're doing. There's a movement happening. We're Californians. We don't follow. We lead. We are building the power to make health happen in communities across the state. We are coming together to build one California, a smarter, more inclusive and equitable state that creates health and opportunity for all of us. Join us. To learn more, visit buildinghealthycommunities.org. And what's more,
All right. So really quickly, I'm going to try to, Sakira, do you think that you would be able to send in a private message, Vernice, the link to the Trump administration session? Because I think our links have been jumbled and some people who are trying to get to that session are not able to at the moment.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sakira. Great. So for our review, we're going to discuss environmental justice. Seeing as this is the 6th UMD Symposium on Environmental Justice and Health Disparities, we're probably not going to have to spend too much time on this. And we're just going to review this definition from Bunyan Bryant, Dr. Bunyan Bryant. And this is the definition that we like to use the most in the Community Engagement, Environmental Justice, and Health Lab. There's other definitions from the EPA, et cetera, but I think that we believe this is the the definition that really gets at the heart of what environmental justice is and explains it most adequately. And we and Dr. Bunyan Bryant say that, you know, when people can realize their highest potential without experiencing isms and are supported by decent paying and safe jobs, quality schools and recreation, decent housing and adequate health care, democratic decision-making, personal empowerment, these are all things that support an environmentally just world. When we say without experiencing isms, what we mean is racism, sexism, classism, ableism, any sort of structure, system that is preventing people from, as we say, reaching their highest potential. So environmental justice is about health, sure, but it's also about well-being. It's about daily activities, daily life. When you can reach your highest potential, it not only means that you have a safe and healthy environment to live in, but your environment promotes you as an individual, as a community, to really do the things, have agency, do the things that you wish to do. There's also this portion of this definition that says that communities are free of violence, drugs, and poverty. You know, these are once again things that can mitigate your ability to interfere with your ability to reach your highest potential. And once again, to really, you know, play into the environment aspect of it, it's where cultural and biological diversity are respected. I think there's, you know, it's well established that biological diversity makes for a healthier ecosystem when you're looking at it from a, from a biological perspective, but also cultural diversity makes a community, your environment, more rich in a similar way. And EJ communities, or environmentally just communities, I should say, are places where distributive justice prevails. So everybody has, you know, once again, it's about access to the same ability to reach your highest potential. So that's what we're talking about, distributive justice. So moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit about how the built environment supports health, potentially detracts from health, the link between the built environment and health. So one of the things that is really important to how things are distributed throughout your environment, your immediate environment, has to do with planning and zoning. So when we describe planning, it's best to think of it as the design of cities and other areas. So it focuses on the management and use of land, roads, buildings, and more. So when I try to think about planning, I think about it really as the plan. What is it that we are trying to accomplish here with the land use? Are we trying to make land use, is this supposed to be a public use right here? Is this a private use? Are we trying to make this an area where how many people can fit in this public use? For instance, you think about the design of a park, maybe like you're talking about maybe the width of sidewalks. This is something that's important now in light of COVID-19. How wide should sidewalks be in public places? Depending on your ability to shape that sort of decision, you know, you might be limited by the space of pre-existing structures and things like that, but you know, how far apart should we be? How many people can fit in this area? And that's all part of the, you know, your planning of a community, of a city, of any area, really. I think in a rural context, you can think about how much land is maybe reserved for agricultural production. You know, there's things like land trusts and stuff like that. That is before it becomes into law that, okay, this land is reserved for farming. It has to be, there needs to be a plan. There needs to be a community plan coming together to figure these things out. How do we want to use land, right? So when we talk about zoning, zoning is really the laws that determine how space is used in a community for human activity and development. So let's say that you're planning on building a park in an area, but it turns out that that area is zoned for industrial use, and there's actually, you can't put a park there. That area in the city might be, okay, this is actually where we do all of our shipping in and out of the city, in a port city. Like I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. You know, there's a lot of area that is zoned for industrial use, particularly around shipping. That you also might have industrial use, as we can see in a lot of environmental justice communities, like unwanted land uses. You have an area that's zoned for maybe a power plant, or zoned for a landfill or things like that. So you might have, you know, a community development corporation, or the planning department in the city might have an idea for where they want to plan a park or things like that, but they actually really have to make sure that these things are in line with the zoning laws, and that they are allowed to put these various land uses where they would like them. So this is an activity that we have used with a number of different groups that really tries to demonstrate how you know, planning and zoning affect your everyday. You know, this looks like a semi-urban area with lots of different land uses that we see here. Like we're going to go through and kind of discuss what we see here, and why these decisions are related to planning and zoning, and how they relate to health really as well. So street trees. These are trees that are generally not on private property. This is a decision that's made by local governments that, all right, on public streets, we're going to have trees in this area. And the trees, you know, there's lots of environmental benefits to trees. They provide shade, really hot days. They are good for air quality. They look nice, and there's a lot to be said for how an area looks in terms of whether or not it's going to be inviting for certain uses in general. So that is really something that, when I was learning about planning and zoning, not something I've necessarily thought about. You know, I see lots of trees on the sides of roads and things like that. Really didn't think about how they got there or why they were there, but it is very strategic. There's lots of many studies that show that, you know, green space is also, there's an association between green space and crime. So I think that this is really how we get to how environments support environmentally just communities. So we see sidewalk width. So this is something that I already talked about. This is a decision to see how many people can fit on this block. Is this block comfortable for people to walk? Is this a block where somebody maybe in a wheelchair is able to traverse easily? Is this somewhere where people that have a stroller is able to traverse easily? Things like that. And then once again, like I mentioned before, how much space can you have between people? That's really important in the time of COVID-19 and in the wake of COVID-19. Fast food locations. So once again, this is a zoning decision. Are we going to allow for there to be restaurants opening up in a certain area? What does the restaurant support? Does it support, you know, maybe we see here, this is like a big building. Are we putting this fast food location here as a way to make sure that there's food options for people? But what kinds of food options are best for people, right? This kind of gets to discussions about food sovereignty, food security, food deserts, food swamps. I know that some of those terms are maybe not some of the preferred terms at this time, because people think like, oh, well, I live in a desert. Why should I, what are you saying that a desert is a negative thing? But the point is that we're talking about food access and availability. And there's actually a panel later in the day, the food equity panel in the DMV, where if you're interested in some of those conversations, you can check that out later. But so job locations. So this is sort of hard to see up here, but that looks like maybe an office building up there in the right-hand corner, right? So where people work is also very much related to planning and zoning. Like I said, there's industrial uses of land. There's also a land that can be zoned for, big office parks. I know, for instance, in I grew up, like I said, I'm using Baltimore as an example, but in some of the suburbs like Cockeysville and Owings Mills, you'll see there's a huge amount of office parks, and that's a zoning decision by the county. That expansion of office parks was allowed in those areas. So you'll see lots of businesses take up residence in sort of these sprawling office parks that exist in Owings Mills and Cockeysville. Open space in parks. This is something I was just talking about as well. There's so many benefits to having green space, reductions in crime, better air quality, ability to exercise. If you have a park where you can go run or play a sport or whatever it may be, and also parks for me during this time have been such a boon, in the sense that we all have to stay inside and stay 6 feet apart and things like that. But when you have space where you can go out and spread out, of course, with your mask on and all of that, it's like very, you can see the impact that green space has on mental health. At least I have during this time. Just the ability to be outside and to be in a place that's safe, that's important too. So now we're going to talk about school locations. I think that a lot of people are familiar with, where you live. It determines where your children can go to school. Public schooling is determined oftentimes, in so many cases, based on your zip code, where tax, local property taxes fund the schools and things like that. So, but where you actually put schools is very important as well, like in terms of land use. I think that some of the things that we talk about in the lab a lot are, these unfortunate cases where you see schools placed right next to highways, places that have really bad air quality. And then you see high incidences of, childhood asthma, things like that. So all of these decisions of where we're placing things really has a huge bearing on environmental justice concerns. Building heights. So once again, we could talk about building heights in terms of environmental justice, because depending on how high a building is, there's different levels of air pollution and things like that. Building heights also, you potentially are blocking views. I know that this was a discussion that we were talking about a few weekends ago during the environmental justice symposium, about how people believe that having a good view, and there's a lot of privilege in that, in understanding that a view is important and things like that. So home sizes, another issue. Once again, if you're these things are determined by planning and zoning as well. How many people are you fitting on land? Is this I think something that I often think about, not only home sizes, but maybe parking lot sizes, things like this. Are we really using land in a way that benefits the most people? Or are we using land in a way that benefits the folks who can afford certain things? So you might be able to build a huge house on a big parcel of land, but it's only serving a single family. And you think about really how is that supporting the community at large? And maybe what are the environmental concerns of having a large house like that, using so much energy, maybe maintaining a lawn, etc. What does that have to do with the environment? Things like that. Street width similar to sidewalk widths. I don't want to stick on this slide forever, so we might fast forward a little bit. But so this is an activity that we've done a lot with, once again, various groups, a lot of school-age children, but also some community groups. And we talk about once again, environmental justice. So I'm going to invite some people who are on the session right now. If you want to unmute yourself or use the chat. So what are some things that you see in this picture, and what don't you see in this picture in relation to some of the things we were just talking about, land use, planning and zoning, environmental justice?
How you doing? This is Vincent Martin from Detroit.
Yep.
And I'm looking at, these electrical wiring and the industry adjacent to the population buttressing the property line. So I would question the zoning in this area, because it looks like it's definitely a mixed zoning situation. And I don't know if it's...
Oh, where are you, buddy?
Huh?
You?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I hear you. Yes. We see we see that this industry right next to where people are living, right? And what does that it's like a mixed use is what you're saying, right? You see industrial use and a residential use right next to each other, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. Great. Thank you. I see Latoya in the chat says, I see power lines, but no trees. Or maybe the trees do not have leaves, but more trees would be nice, right? That's kind of what we were just talking about as well, with regards to, what the benefits of trees in communities. I imagine that, we don't necessarily know where this is, but this could be, a very hot place, lots of asphalt, right? During the summer, things like that. So anybody else? All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the things that other people have pointed out when we've done this exercise before is that there's this truck over here that's just kind of a detached truck idling here. Okay, I see somebody else in the chat. Large cars without economy consideration. That's a good point as well. We see some big trucks parked on the side of the road as well. Street parking is an issue that I think a lot of people can resonate with when you're talking about where you live and things like that. All right, I see some more things in the chat. Homes are very close together. From Secura. Thank you, Secura. Latoya Gray, once again, sidewalks could be improved. Yeah, certainly. I see there's some crumbling sidewalks here. The sidewalk, it looks like there's maybe even a road back here. So that, the sidewalks are very close to maybe where two roads converge. We see some graffiti. We see, of course, yep, these stacks, lots of wires. Great. So thanks for participating in that, everybody. So we're going to go look at another picture. Oh, one more thing in the chat. Runoff concerns with poor sidewalks. Is that an abandoned truck? Right. That's what I was talking about. So some other people have noticed this truck thinking, oh, this might just be sitting here to rust. People have tagged it, I think that the runoff concerns are true too. Like a lot of pavement, and then you see, if there's a big rain or something like that, you see water running down the street, picking up all sorts of sediment, oils from the ground, things like that, and it's running right into the storm drain down here. And there's also later today a stormwater session, if anybody's interested in that, where we're going to be talking about stormwater issues, particularly in urban areas, and the problems that can cause for the environment. So we're going to move on to another picture right here, and this we're going to kind of play a similar game. What do you see and what don't you see here? Leafy streets, trees, a bike lane. Right. So once again, like you could even just see like all these shadows on the ground. This is all, these trees are providing a lot of shade. There's this person right here riding their bicycle and, not in a car, not putting pollutants in the air from their car, and they're protected. They're protected from the cars. It's not only just a bike lane, but it's a protected bike lane, which is great. No industries, right? That's a really good point. Detached homes with porches, places for people to be outside. They look better. The houses look better, I see. But yeah, the point, no industries. That is a great, we were talking about the mixed zoning use there before, right? Now we see that this looks like a kind of a purely residential area. The overhead wiring, yeah, I think that the wiring looks, it looks a little less jumbled. We do still see some tangle over here, but you know, and then there is a downside, right? Lots of cars there, and that is a great point. You know, I think that one of the things that I like about this exercise is that while I think that we're trying to steer people to show that one area has better infrastructure than the other, this one's not great either. Honestly, there's a lot of cars here parked on the street. We do have somebody using the bike lane, but perhaps there's still not enough reason for people to adopt using bicycles more. So yeah, I think that one of the things about the community block assessment tool that we're going to look at shortly is that really there are a lot of areas that you might seem like there's a lot of infrastructure issues, planning and zoning issues associated with it, but generally there's a lot of places are in need of improvement. I see very green. There's uneven pavement here too. That's right? So that's kind of what our tool is meant to do, is to pick up on all these things that maybe from a first glance, this looks like, oh, great street, you know, excellent. But there are some things that could be improved in this picture as well, right? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide here. So the way that we have been talking about improving infrastructure, improving land use to be more supportive of environmental justice is through an idea called the Environmental Benefits District framework. And basically, this framework shows that, you know, when you reduce pathogens and increase salutogens and holistically look at health in an area, you are going to improve the environmental justice concerns in the area. So there's a larger framework that we've been working on developing. Dr. Wilson has been developing this framework for a number of years. We've been writing blogs about the Environmental Benefits District framework. And actually, Sakira, if you wouldn't mind, could you get the link to the EBD blog and put that in the chat?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. This is a framework that, you know, we believe can be used in communities that have lots of EJ concerns that can ultimately be used to improve the environmental, you know, those things that we're talking about, a life without isms where people can reach their highest potential. The environment is really supporting people's ability to live, things like that. So, you know, I talked about pathogens and salutogens. I think that people are probably more familiar with the term pathogen because it's used in biology. You know, you have a pathogen that's going to make you sick, things like that. But so I'm going to start with salutogens. Salutogens are basically the opposite of a pathogen, right? So salutogens are positive features in the community that support population health and community cohesion. So we see these things on the right. All right, we have a nice park with big trees, lots of space to spread out, a table where you can sit and eat, lots of green space. And then we also see here, you know, a supermarket that has lots of produce options. We're looking at this person, you know, getting all sorts of, you know, leafy greens in the basket, some lemons, things like that. So being able to, you know, have these things in your community makes it easier to support your health, right? If you have to go in your car, you know, drive 40 minutes to get to an area where you can buy healthy food that supports your, you know, your vitality, not only are you driving for 40 minutes, so, you know, putting more of these pollutants in the air from your car, from the combustion of your car, But then you're going to be probably less likely to want to go. Everybody's busy, you know. Are you really going to take that amount of time out of your day to go and get food when there's you know, maybe some less healthy options? Maybe there's fast food locations right around the corner. What's easier? Great. So, and remember, we're going to talk about the pathogens next. So these are the negative features in the community that harm population health and detract from community cohesion. So we see potholes, and you think like, all right, so what does this mean? It shows that there, you know, that it allows for the community to not be as connected, in the sense that it's difficult to drive on the roads. Your infrastructure is not supporting you getting around. So let's say that you do have to drive a certain distance to get to a grocery store with healthy food options. Well, you're gonna maybe be hitting these potholes and breaking your car, and then the next thing you know, you're having to pay to fix your car. And then that's, you know, having an added expense like that in your life is not, it doesn't support your well-being. And then also we see here, you know, this is like a landfill with these smokestacks in the background. And, you know, maybe that's trash incineration or something going on. And certainly this is not the best use of land that we could have. We have, there's, you know, all the land underneath of this landfill is not going to be able to support life for who knows how long, right? So this is the EBD framework, the Environmental Benefits District framework. Increase in salutogens, decrease in pathogens, and that is really how we are able to increase people's vitality, livelihood, things like that. So now, after that introduction, I see that we still have a good amount of time left. I really, hopefully that background wasn't too much review, and it seems like you all are pretty familiar with the concepts, but I think it's important to frame what this tool, you know, the importance of this tool, because when you see it, you might think, all right, we're just, you know, walking around the block, looking at things, but really, when you understand the theory behind it, the reasons why we're doing this, it really, I think, makes the tool shine a little bit more. So.
Hey, Joe, we've got a comment from somebody.
Great. Let me check this out in the chat. I see that there's very green. Maybe was there uneven pavements, and then I see your blog post. Or maybe I'm not seeing what you're the chat that you're referencing, Sakira.
Oh, sorry, it was a private chat. Maybe they meant to send it to everybody. When repaired costs is transferred to the community, was the comment. But
right. Okay. So there you go. Exactly. So repair costs are oftentimes transferred to the community. That's certainly, yeah, it's coming out of everybody's tax dollars, but I think that the idea, hopefully, is that everybody's contributing to the larger pool, and it's going to really support, you know, the infrastructure of the community when we see, you know, things like that fixed. So thank you. Appreciate that. So the block assessment tool, let's get down to it. This is a tool that allows for community members of all ages, abilities, and skills to scan their neighborhoods and try to identify and document different conditions in the natural and built environment. So we're going to be looking at these pathogens and salutogens in the community, identifying them, and from there being able to, you know, make them actionable. What can we do to improve areas where there's high amounts of pathogens? How can we spread salutogens more equitably, you know, so that everybody has access to them? Things like that. So using this community-based participatory research model, which is a collaborative community-based approach to research that equitably involves community members and organizations in all aspects of the research process. So this supports the review and the assessment of the neighborhood. We do a lot of CBPR, is what we like to call it, community-based participatory research in the lab. And that's really what this tool does too. It's a community-based tool. We are not, as researchers of the lab, as University of Maryland, going into communities and doing this sort of assessment for people. This is in collaboration. It involves the community perspective, right? So sure, the tool has, it is a very quantitative tool in the sense that, all right, you're gonna take, stock of how many fire hydrants there are. But there's also space in the tool for comments. There's space in the tool, it's still under development, but we're planning to include a photograph portion where you're able to upload a picture while you use this tool, so that we can get more of an idea of the story here. Because what we're trying to have happen with this tool is that this is a tool. This is not an extractive research experience. This is a tool that is meant to be used by people so that they can advocate for better resources in their areas, essentially. So this uses, yes, the CBPR framework, where we are involving communities in every aspect of the research, including the construction of the tool, which is part of what we're going to talk about at the end of this, is that this tool, we're hoping to get feedback on it, essentially. So moving forward, why are we using community block assessment? I think I've probably gone over this a little bit. We're learning more about our neighborhood strengths and weaknesses, strengths and needs, I should say. Pathogens and salutogens, what can be done in order to improve an area, and what can we learn from areas where we do see high amounts of salutogens. We're going to encounter important features of the environment for research. So ultimately at the end of this block assessment, you get a data set, right? You see how many parks are here, how many stop signs, etc. This is data that ultimately can be used in a variety of research contexts. We could, look at all of these community blocks and say that community blocks that have X amount of green space maybe are associated with such and such temperature reduction. When we're talking about how heat affects people. So it can be used for real, scientific exploration, scientific inquiry. We're going to use these community block assessments to learn about how the community works. And what I mean by that is we learn about the infrastructure. If we're able to see once again that there's no bike lanes and therefore we don't have any bicyclists, things like that, it really helps to understand how the infrastructure of the community supports the everyday life in the community. And data and science are powerful tools. Ultimately, we hope that this will not just be used for scientific inquiry, like I said before, but also that we're going to use this for action. And that is really a big part about CBPR2, is that it's when you're doing research in collaboration with communities, I think that the expectation, and also what I believe should be the outcome, is that at the end of that, you're able to actually make a change, right? Science for the sake of science doesn't go far enough, and I think that's a huge part of environmental justice, is that, all right, we can quantify problems, but how do we fix problems? And that is what we hope to be for this tool. All right, so does anybody have any questions right now? The rest of, I'm going to show how the tool works for probably maybe the next 20 minutes or so, but I just want to see if anybody has anything right. Okay, I see some comments in the chat. Oh, Sakura posting more blogs. Thank you, Sakura. Great. All right. Okay, in that case, maybe we can do questions at the end, but I'm going to demonstrate the tool now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to.
One of the what's the strategy to get this tool to community on the ground floor? That might be very, very key. And how we get them up and running with the actual training to be able to utilize it to the best effectiveness. I think that's something that needs to be discussed. Do you have a plan for that? I yield. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the question. So the idea is that when we get this tool completed, and it feels like a big oversight on my part not to have mentioned this, but it's absolutely a great question. The idea is that this tool, as it exists now, I'm showing you all basically the beta version of the tool. But this tool is going to be a smartphone app, ultimately. So anybody who has a smartphone or anybody who knows somebody who has a smartphone will be able to download this tool and have it on their phone. And you'll be able to go out when it's safe to do so, or wearing a mask 6 feet apart, and do block assessments. Look at the things that are on your block, log it with your phone, and then at the end of your block assessment, you are given this data set. And the idea is that community groups, community-based organizations, schools, any sort of collaboration of people in the community can get together, use this tool, use it around several blocks in the area, and really get an idea for what the community looks like in terms of the infrastructure, things like that, and then come together with the data that you generate together and use that data for take it to your city council person, take it to your local local school board, whatever it might be, where you think that you're going to be able to make some change there. So yes, that is really the plan for getting it out, is finishing the development of the tool so that it is available, for download for smartphones. So I'm going to be showing the web-based version, but we have currently in development an Android app of this tool. So that's really the main way that we plan to get it out, and then hopefully through demonstrations like this, more marketing through EJ network communities, folks who are involved in the EJ movement will get the word spread about it, and hopefully it'll take off in that way. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Great. All right. I'm going to get to showing the tool, just a quick demonstration. I believe this session is ending at about 1. So we have we have about half an hour. I want to be able to show you the tool, and then we can go and do some more questions again, but I appreciate your question. I just have my eye on the time. So let me bring this tool up and we'll run through. Oop, not that. Here we go. And share screen. All right, can everybody see this here? The community block assessment. Let's get started.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to enter my information here. The way that the tool starts is it's like many web-based apps where at the beginning you just have to enter your information, and this basically allows when you're generating your data set. At the end, it basically pairs the data with your inquiry that you just made. So I'm going to enter all of my info here. I'm going to put the Siege Lab, gmail.com. Today's date is 10/10. The time is about 12:30. And what is the name of the block that we're going to be assessing? So I'm going to be assessing, we'll just say, we'll look at the 300 block of 31st Street. So this is a block in Baltimore where I used to live. So the cross streets, the streets that block off the block are Guilford Avenue and Barclay Street. So the block that we're going to be looking at theoretically is between, Guilford and Barclay. And then we're going to go to the next. What's the weather like today? It's pretty temperate. A little cloudy. I'm going to say maybe overcast. And no rain or snow. So we use this, this kind of temperature gauge, because that also tells us how maybe people are interacting with the block at the moment. Also, If there's snow on the street, you might not be able to see potholes, things like that. So having the weather conditions just helps to better picture what the block looks like on the particular day. So moving on the app, these are you would complete that first section, and then all of these icons come up, and you are allowed to go through and talk about what sorts of things on the block that you want to discuss, right? Transit, if there's public transit on the block, is there once again a lot of cars on the block? The block features stores, industry, and depending on where you are, some of these things might not really apply. So the block of the 300 block of 31st Street is not an industrial area, so there wouldn't really be any need to use this section. Health services, it's a very residential block. There's not a hospital there. There's a hospital nearby, but not a hospital there. So what I'm going to really spend my time discussing are the block features, right? So I'm going to go next. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the block features: a description of the overall street layout and street network. It captures information related to the width and length of the street, signs, street lamps, fire hydrants, and other objects on the street. And as you can see here, we have some sort of examples from the web. Okay, we're talking about fire hydrants, sidewalks, once again, telephone poles, utility poles, street signs. Do you know what street you're even on? Because some places the street signs aren't available. More fire hydrants, murals, things like that. So we're going to continue with the block feature, and we're going to start to assess the block, right? So, and once again, because we're having to do this virtually and we're not able to go and walk outside, if we were probably doing an in-person conference, that might be what we would do. We would walk outside the University of Maryland. We'd have, iPhone in hand or Android or whatever it might be, and actually look at one of the blocks on the University of Maryland campus. But we're going to have to do this virtually, and we're going to talk about this block that I used to live on that I can pretty accurately remember, because I lived there for quite a long time. So is the block the size of a standard city block, 1/10 of a mile? And so we're doing this once again to better picture the area, because a block that's in the city like Baltimore is very different than a block that you might find in Bowie, Maryland. Just population density is different. And along with population density being different, there might be density in stores being different. So, you might see more sidewalks in an area like Baltimore versus somewhere maybe a little bit more suburban, because the city is set up to have more walking infrastructure, things like that. So this is a typical city block. It is the same as a typical city block length. So about a football field and a little bit more than that. Almost 2 football fields. How many lanes is the street? It's a 2-lane street. So we'll move on to the next section. What type of block is it? Is there street parking? Once again, I think that we can, talk about street parking. The merits of street parking: you park right in front of your house. You don't have to walk as far. You don't have to have a parking lot. If there's, public parking on the street or permitted parking on the street, one of the things that takes up a lot of energy and space are parking lots, especially multi-level parking lots, things like that. A lot of concrete helps the city really heat up additionally. So there is street parking. Is it a dead-end street? It is not a dead-end street. It is a 2-way outlet street. Is there a median present? No. And a median is the reason we ask questions about a median is median slows the pace of traffic. A median can host trees. A median provides well, yeah, it's like more a traffic calming device, things like that. Are there sidewalks? Yes. Are there traffic calming or speed devices present? So when I hover over this, you might see over here on the right, examples are speed bumps, speed limit signs, cameras, red light cameras, traffic circles, etc. Well, there are no speed bumps on the street. There are no speed cameras or red light cameras or traffic circles, but there is a speed limit sign on this street. So I will put yes. And it's going to take me to the next section. All right. And now, because I selected yes there, it's taking me to this section where we can count the speed bumps. Like I said, there were 0. No traffic circles, no rumble strips, speed limit signs. There is 1 speed limit sign on this block. Electronic speed monitors, cameras, red light cameras. All right, the rest of that's not there. So depending on how heavily trafficked this street is, this might be a problem. You know, if there are people that are really, if something that community sees is like, oh my gosh, there are people that are constantly driving down the street really quickly, and it puts my children at danger, and it puts our pets at danger. And it also, we have frequent accidents because of it. People are crashing into each other, you know, at the intersection because they're going too fast down the street. So we might think, okay, well, maybe there's a need for a speed bump or something here. So, all right, some of the count each of the following. Well, on each corner of the street on this block, there were street lights. So there are 4. Utility poles. My memory is a little fuzzy on the utility poles. I'm going to say there were 2 that go through the alley that bisects the block. Fire hydrants, there was 1 on each side of the street. And trees, well, there were quite a bit of trees on this block, luckily. I'm going to say there were probably about 8 trees on this city block.
Hey, Joe, Vincent Martin said canopy, so I'm glad there were street trees.
Yep. And it's a canopy. That's also a good point with the median too. That there's, you know, it provides a canopy, and there's a lot that can be said with, not only is that shade for people, but it respects biological diversity, like we were saying before as well, right? So you have an area for, you know, birds to nest, or squirrels, or, you know, whatever it might be. All right, thanks for that. Moving forward, murals, security cameras, and crosswalks. So, you know, I think that murals have a, you know, can be seen as a huge benefit to a community when you see a mural, particularly a mural that is not just placed in a community, but created by the community, right? It's a project that people can work together on to show how they want to, you know, show their community off to the rest of the world, right? It's a collaborative process. It's a practice in agency. It's community art, brings people together. And then, you know, the last time that I did one of these community block assessments, one of the things that we came across was a mural that was actually a mural that was promoting gardening in the area. So not only can the mural itself be something that is created by the community, generally has a positive message, but can even have a positive message directly related to the environment, things like that. So unfortunately, where I lived, there was no mural. I would have liked to have a mural. Security cameras. You know, a security camera can, depending on how you view it, can be seen as you know, a positive thing or a negative thing, really. If maybe it makes you, it provides some feelings of safety, but also maybe feelings of surveillance. So that's why it's important to take things like this into account, because depending on who is looking at something like a security camera, it might be seen as something that's positive or negative. There were no security cameras on my block. Crosswalks with traffic signals. I see that, someone says infringement on privacy. Right, some people will potentially see that as infringement on privacy. Exactly. So crosswalks with traffic signals, we did not have any crosswalks with traffic signals, which that, when we talk about something like that, it's related to, you know, disability, in the sense that if there's a crosswalk that, you know, a lot of crosswalks with signals have voice assistance for people who might not be able, who are, you know, sight impaired, things like that. Okay, crosswalks without traffic signals, yes, there were on the end of each, at the end of the block, crosswalks. All right, signs with positive or neutral messages. So example of something like this, at a neutral message, of course, would be a sign that's, you know, lets you know there's an ATM somewhere. A positive message might be a sign that says, you know, clean up after your dog, something like that. Maybe not phrased in that way, but, you know, things that are beneficial to the community. So there were not a lot of signs really where I was. And signs with negative messages, I think that some signs that you might see with negative messages might be advertising for things that are, you know, not good for your health. Cigarette advertisements, alcohol advertisements. A lot of these are regulated in a lot of places. But yeah, also maybe you'll see some signs that say beware. You know, that you might see something like that as hostile. If there's you know, stay away, things like that. Caution tape, things like that's a sign. You know, a sign with a negative message. There were no signs with negative messages either. Pretty neutral area. Not a lot of signage where I was. And in signs and languages other than English, this plays into what we're talking about with cultural diversity. But there were no signs in other languages either. This is the take a photo section that I was talking about. So we've come to the end here of our block feature section. As I said before, there's all these other things that you can complete when you're assessing the block as well. But this is where we're having that qualitative, you know, the less, all right, we're just counting things. This is where you can take a photo where you can actually show, you know what, there's a pothole. But what we didn't talk about was that this pothole is like, you know, a whole bicycle could fall into this pothole. It's more of a sinkhole, actually. So you include that, and that really says, you know, a picture says 1,000 words, right? And then here's also this section where we can talk any comments you have on the photo and the block features on this block. So I could say, you know, this block is a great place to live. And then you get a little bit of the community perspective here, as opposed to just counting. We're trying to blend the qualitative with the quantitative when we do this. So what would you like to do next? Complete another section or save my answers and exit the survey? Considering the time that we have right now, I'm going to save my answers and exit the survey. And what this does is that I could print the form. So this is gonna, oh, you might not be able to see this, but what you're able to do is you're able to print out all of your responses. And like we said, you basically at this point have a data set. It's also saved into an internal database, which will be in the final version of the tool accessible by who is ever using the tool, using it collaboratively, so you can kind of pool your answers together for more than just looking at a single block, but then you can look at a whole geographic area, several blocks, a whole community defined by the people who live there. You know, communities, there's, you know, census tracts and block groups and all these different ways that researchers and statisticians and whoever try to define communities, but letting a community define themselves is very useful. I see someone has their hand raised.
Hi, this is Vincent Martin again. I wanted to find out can this tool be utilized the data that we gather to be superimposed in any type of EJ screen to be able to really define an EJ screen's capability with this data. Is that possible? I yield. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I believe as of right now, there is not an exact integration with the EJ screen, but you can certainly use the EJ screen tool, which I don't know if everybody's familiar with the EJ screen tool, but that's yet another session later today. There will be a demonstration of the EJ screen tool and the park equity tool. And the EJ screen tool is a mapping tool. So you can look at a map of an area and generate an environmental justice score. So I would say that what you are able to do is you can use the EJ screen tool, for instance, in the state of Maryland, and locate the blocks that you're actually identifying in the EJ screen or using your block assessment, and then find them on the EJ screen tool as well. So you can zoom in, right? And on the EJ screen tool and get down to and look at your exact area and find what the EJ score as determined by the EJ screen tool is there. And then you can make a relationship, a correlation there potentially between what the EJ score is and what the pathogens and salutogens are. So I would expect that, for instance, in an area where you see a high EJ score, you'll also see lots of pathogens. You'll also see maybe an industrial use close by, nearby, maybe not exactly on the block, but nearby to that. So I think that these tools, while they're not interoperable, where there's not, at the end of this, you're not getting an EJ score on the community block assessment tool, the My Block Counts tool, what you are able to do is, use the tools in tandem, use them together. And really that's kind of why we're developing a number of different tools, so that you can get different perspectives. You can get the EJ score with the EJ screen tool, and then here you can get the score of, how many bus stops are on your block, and then maybe there's some correlation there between air quality and the number of times that the bus comes by a day, things like that. So that's probably going to be your best bet for using these tools as of right now.
Thank you.
Of course. So yes, I think that now we have a little bit of time left in the session. If there's any more questions, I would be happy to answer them. And I also would just like your feedback in general about the tool, how you think the tool might be improved, things like that. But yeah, questions, comments are all welcome at this time. And it should be noted that these questions are the session's being recorded for posterity. So your feedback and questions will probably go forward to not only help us work on the tool, but also be viewed by some other people and help them as well. So.
This is Vincent. I see this is a very, very useful tool for especially environmental justice community, because they always say it's the EJ community, but you can actually define it, actually go and demonstrate where different locations that are providing those kind of things that cause the environmental justice in the community. You can actually put an actual picture to the data. So maybe in future litigation or mitigation, it can be utilized for those kind of things. Thank you. I think it's really helpful tool.
Great, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it, Vincent. I see a comment in the chat. How do you expect this tool will be used and in what contexts? So we really expect this tool, I mean, as it's very much in the pilot stages. We are working on it as we speak. We have used it in some more demonstrations in educational settings, but we really do believe that this tool can be used in a variety of different contexts. And I think it is, in the name, My Block Counts, it is generally geared towards more urban settings for sure, or residential and, urban settings where you see a lot of mixed land use. That was certainly one of the things that when we were developing the tool a little bit, that people thought, is this going to be able to be used in a lot of rural contexts? And I believe it can be, but it's less useful and probably would need to be maybe even another tool that's more specific to the rural EJ concerns. I think that is certainly something that we can work on more. But we really want this tool to be used by, like I said, by anybody who believes that they are, a local community-based organization who thinks that, okay, we have some issues in terms of the infrastructure, or maybe even, yes, like an environmental justice concern, like a power plant or something. And you are able to show, create a data set that take stock of the things that are there and aren't there. And you can also combine it with other data. So you can demonstrate that people who live in, an area where there's less access to healthy food, for instance, and you might even be able to use life expectancy data from the Maryland Environmental Public Health Tracking. You can combine these together to show that there is an issue and a need here. So I think that the expectation is really that, like, anybody can use this tool. You can have children use it. You can have school-age children use it as part of a school project. You can have communities who are concerned about their health use it. And in the context, you could use it for education. You could, at the end of it, you say, look what we learned about our community. We learned that we have so many cars and no public transportation. But you can also use it for advocacy. You can use this at the end of the day, hopefully. And what we hope is that you'll be able to take this data that you find and say, in our community compared to another community that we assessed, we have so little infrastructure, and we can prove it to you. We don't even have to just say that, oh, we know that there's less bus stops. We can tell you that there are, in this neighborhood, 25 bus stops, and then where we live, there's only 4. And because of that, it's really hard for people to get to work. It's really hard for people to get healthy food that they need, things like that. So that is sort of I think the hope for this tool is that people are able to use it to change their material conditions. Really, it is a tool for action, and not just science. Though it has that potential as well. I hope that answers your question. Okay, Latoya in the chat says, I think this is great as far as empowering community members. I was a community advisor in my city's planning process, and there is something to be said about empowering and giving people the tools to assess their communities versus a top-down from the planners to the people approach. I found that while the part of my city that I am from is in need of improvement, there are aspects of my community that I value and or feel are lacking, which may be lost through the lens of someone who's not from my community. For instance, planners are pushing for bike lanes, but in certain neighborhoods, that is not a priority when folks are more concerned about obtaining a grocery store. Wonderful comment. I think that is really true, and part of the reason why we want these tools to be used by community members is because, yes, certainly planners and people who have that perspective coming from, a school of urban planning or whatever it might be, might have their preconceived notions about what's best for an area, but really nobody knows quite the situation, like people who have to live there on a daily basis or choose to live there on a daily basis, and I think that is a really important part of this tool, is that you're getting the community perspective. Somebody might, and that's what you can show with this tool, like you said, that's a perfect example. Somebody might see, oh my gosh, there's a huge need for bike lanes in an area, but that's actually not where the community is concerned with at all. So in their use of this tool, bike lanes might not even be something that you're looking at, right? It might not even be, sure, it's part of the assessment, but you could go straight to the stores section of the tool and only look at the kinds of stores that you have, and maybe able to demonstrate that, all right, there's a lot of, corner stores, but there aren't a lot of, you know, fresh food options, or maybe we like the corner stores, but we just want them to carry different varieties of food. You know, it really is a malleable tool that we hope people can use for their own purposes. So appreciate that comment. Anybody else have any, oh, one more message. How can we get healthcare providers involved? Good point. So I think that one of the sections that we didn't look at on the tool is that there is a section on the tool about healthcare. There is health services. So you're able to look at how many clinics are there, hospitals, et cetera. That is something else that we can look at. And so, I mean, an immediate solution that I see, or thought ways to use that, is once again, going to your local, you know, city council person, advisor, whoever it might be, and being able to demonstrate that there's a lack of healthcare providers in the area. There's a lack of, you know, maybe there's a need for more of a, like, instead of, you know, a traditional practitioner, maybe you want to have something like a city MD, a patient, you know, so people have, with a wide variety of different ailments can go in, as opposed to just having a general practitioner in the area, things like that. I see quantitative equity analysts for goods and services. Yes, so Vincent, thank you for sharing that. I think that that's what this tool really is trying to do. We're trying to put a number on equity in a way, right? Which is only one way to get to equity. And so that's really why also this community perspective is valued here. So how to get healthcare providers involved. I hope that answers your question a little bit. Is I think that the health section of this tool tries to quantify some of that, but I think, you know, you can only you can advocate for having you know, an additional hospital, maybe change the zoning so that you incentivize people to come in and bring those types of services, things like that. Great. So we have just about 3 minutes left. I'm going to take maybe one more question, and then we will close out. I appreciate you all being here so much. Hopefully this was informative. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to add? I see one new message. My email, great. I will put that in the chat for everybody to see. And you can get in touch with me with any questions that you have regarding the tool, any suggestions that you have. Hopefully, if you would like to be involved in maybe piloting this tool a little bit, yeah, I think that we can try to make that happen as well. Thank you all so much for being here. And here's my email. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope that you have a good rest of the day at the symposium or otherwise. And appreciate your feedback and questions. And yep, I'm going to be leading another session in about 10 minutes. It's how to use environmental public health tracking data for a variety of uses that hopefully also can help improve people's lives, daily lives, well-being, things like that. So great. Thank you all so much. Take care.